prioritizing self-care in your life and what that looks like for you. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Well, I honestly really didn't even hear the term self-care, I think, until probably 5 years ago. Obviously, it's been in existence forever, but really the buzz of using the word self-care, I think, really started probably 5 years ago when I was going through a lot of transitions in my life. And it's really just taking care of yourself and how you go about that. And when I look back into my past and how I incorporated self-care into my life at different parts of my life, I think it's changed, it's evolved, and that's natural. It should be, because when you're 19, self-care to you is going to be very different than when you're 25 and 35 and 45.
Yeah.
But I really started being cognizant of implementing it into my life on a daily basis 4 years ago. I went through a divorce 5 years ago, but that first year was so much healing, sadness, confusion, frustration, all of those things. And year two was my self-care year, where I realized that doing those little things were important for me. So in the beginning, it was taking a shower. That was self-care for me, because it was little things that were important. And the way I incorporate it now, it's carving out that time for me to do me things. And my self-care is very different than someone else's self-care. So it's whatever fills me up, and it changes. There's certain days that going on a run is self-care for me. And then there's a day that I'm so tired and I want to hit snooze, and that's what I do. And that's self-care. So it evolves, I think, really every day.
Yeah, it does. And I love how you differentiated those two things, because sometimes you just need to sleep a little more. And, sometimes, and life doesn't always allow for that. I get that. But on those mornings where you're feeling like you need to hit the snooze button, think about what's in your day. Is there anything in your day that really can't wait? I'm not talking about feeding, yourself and your children, if you have them, and whatnot. I'm not talking about the basic, but there's so many times we look at our calendar and, I can't change that. I can't change that. I can't change that. Stop and think, are you going to be better if you get a little more rest and reschedule a few things? Are you going to be better? You're better show up as yourself and better for that person you're supposed to be doing that with, if it's engaged with another person. Or if it's, I think it's just really important. You're worth it. You're valuable enough, and your body's trying to tell you something. So I love that you talked about that, because it sounds simple, but sleep is, and I'm in a sleep struggle right now. I'm in my early 50s, and I'm the whole menopause game has, and a lot of all that's wrapped into that has wreaked havoc on my sleep. I love sleep. I'm so mad about that right now. Like, I am the grand champion of sleep until like a year and a half ago. And I'm like, that is wrong. I love to sleep. I value my sleep. Yes. I used to be so good at it. So anyway, I digress to say, it can be as simple as that. So pay attention, listen to what your body needs, and give it that day. So thank you for that clarification on that. I think it's so important.
I love that you brought up sleep, actually, because I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of the year. I'm not all about resolutions. It's just not my thing. I think that people tend to break them. And so I set intentions, and I also, I might want to try something new. And so I had been in a really, really bad habit of looking at my phone before I go to bed, and I'd use my phone as my alarm. And then first thing in the morning, before I'm even out of bed, I'm checking emails. And I told myself I was going to try something a little bit different, because sleep is so important for me. And I wasn't getting that good quality sleep. I've been doing it now for 10 days, because we're 10 days into the year. And it's amazing. I've noticed a difference in such a short period of time, just not looking at my phone when I go to bed and not looking at it. And that's a great form of self-care, actually.
It really is. It's just, and again, it doesn't have to be, and I talked about this a lot this week. This has come up a lot this week. It doesn't have to be that big, grandiose thing. It can be all of those little simple things that are taking care of you that add up to a better version of you. Just gaining that extra sleep. Not looking at your phone first thing, giving yourself time to wake up, whatever that looks like, stretching, doing some breathing exercises, having your coffee, whatever that looks like. But I love that you talked about that too, because it's really important. I'm an intention setter too, and I tend to pick a word. I am not a resolution setter. For me, I don't like the message that it sends. Yeah. For me, I'm more about, okay, new year, take care of you. Not new year, new you. You're good. You just need to make sure you value yourself and take care of yourself. And when I say you're good, that doesn't mean that you can't improve, can't grow, can't learn. We all need to be doing that. But yeah, so I'm with you on that. I love the intentions piece, and there's more on that to come. But yeah, I love those simple things. They add up. They matter. And, and pay attention to those when you're because your body's telling you something there. Confidently setting boundaries. You're a busy person. You've got a lot of demands on your time. And as you've gone through these transitions in terms of relationships and changes, I'm sure that had to involve some different kind of boundary setting too, or even discovering what that means for you in a healthy way. So talk to me about your boundaries journey.
That is another word that I didn't know existed until a few years ago.
I know.
Because I was always so bad about setting boundaries. I am a giver and I love to give. And I have always struggled with saying no. And I'm a people pleaser and I like people to like me. And so I have always struggled with having those boundaries. And honestly, even though I've gone through so many transitions in the last 5-6 years, it's really been in the last 2 years I've gotten better with that. And one of the hardest boundaries that I set was, my dad, love him very much. He's great, but he would call me at like the end of the day, check in or text me. And it was like right when I was just kind of winding down from my day. And I had to tell him, and it was really hard, but I said, I will call you maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a couple of days a week, or we need to have some set times of when we're going to be touching base, because it was just too much for me after a really challenging day if I had a full day. And so for me, I will admit it's still hard for me to implement a lot of boundaries. It's something that I can always improve on a little bit better, but I've started with saying no more. And that's a boundary that, again, is very challenging for me. But I was asked to be on a committee from an amazing group, and I was very honored. And I almost said yes, but I looked at my plate. I looked at my workload. I looked at everything I had involved, and I need to make sure I still have time for my personal life. Right. And I said no. I felt bad for a couple of hours probably. And then I realized that just because you feel sad or you feel upset because you had to put that boundary down doesn't mean it was the wrong thing. And ultimately, I'm glad that I did that. But I will admit it's an area where I still have to improve, because I just boundaries can be struggle. It can be hard for someone who wants to be a people pleaser. But yes, I have definitely been implementing them more so, I think, in the last year. And it's just those little things. Saying no, that's a boundary, and it's looking out for yourself.
Yeah, it is. It is looking out for yourself. And I think you had a really important point in that. Just because you feel bad in the moment about it doesn't mean it was the wrong decision for you. Check where that comes from. Does it come from the people pleasing part? Does it come from wanting to be liked by people? Does it come from the fact that this was a good thing? It's just a thing you knew you didn't have the capacity for. And then think ahead, because one of our guests, she did a great job with this, Valerie Rivera. She's like, anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, whatever that is, and it might just be time that you need to refill and have some rest and have some space, or it could be time away from a relationship or family. But that's another way to think about that too. I'm like, okay, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And then that can help you keep in balance too. But I love that it's so simple things, and just not letting that be an indicator. Oh, I feel bad. Well, do I feel bad because if you're feeling like you need to say no, you need to pay attention to that and
listen to that. Yeah, listen to that intuition.
Exactly. That's coming up for a reason. So I loved how you clarified that. Really good. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Well, where do I start with that?
I know. It is a complex, of all of our talking points, it's loaded.
I actually have been in therapy since I was 13. Mm-hmm. I had a really challenging early teens, and I was actually forced to go to therapy. I had attempted suicide at 13 years old, and it was required that I go. And I remember sitting there for probably the first 5 or 6 sessions, and I just had my arms crossed. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was a typical 13-year-old.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, you're 13 of all the ages. Holy cow. I've raised 3 daughters and I've been a 13-year-old myself. I mean, that's packed by itself.
So much. And I remember the day when she said, well, just sit here. If you don't want to talk, we're not going to talk. And the day that I decided to open up. So I really have been working on my emotional health since I was 13. And my parents were divorced at that point. I'd gone through a lot of things. But I didn't know that that's what it was. I didn't know. Sure. But I'd been in and out of therapy from the time I was 13. And I'd not go to a couple of years. And then I'd get back into it. And then when I went through my divorce 5 years ago, I don't know what I would have done without, my therapist, and not just my therapist, but also my emotional health involved taking those breaks. The self-care is a big part of the emotional health. It was talking to people rather than putting up walls and pushing them out. It was opening up. It was just so many things because I felt so alone. And when I was started to do those things, it was helping me heal in ways that I didn't even know at the time. And emotional health is mental health is a big piece of that. And also the physical health ties into the emotional health. When I wasn't working out, because I love working out, it's a huge part of just who I am. And when I wasn't doing that, I would feel sad. But those days that I pushed myself to go on a run in the morning or go to the gym, I felt better. So it was helping me in so many ways. So they're really intertwined.
They're intertwined. You said so many good things there. One, I was feeling really a lot of tension stored up in my body yesterday, but also tired. But I need to get outside. I need to get in the sunshine. We don't have a lot of it this week. It's not super warm, but I'll be fine. And I need to do something rigorous to kind of work some of this out. And so I drug myself out there. And an hour later, I was like, thank God I did that. It changed my whole mindset, how I felt physically, how I felt emotionally. So a lot of power in that. Also, I want to speak to something on the mental health piece that I think is very important for us to remember. If you go onto Jasmine's site, Good Things Are Going to Come, and you listen to her and you hear her and you see her, she is this vibrant, outgoing, wise, beautiful woman. You're not going to look at her and think, gosh, she might have had some struggles early on. We have to be really careful about the assumptions we make about people's stories and the empathy and the lack of judgment. And because you just never know. I would never have guessed that would have been a part of your story, and so also just being mindful of that when we're engaging with people, when we're interacting, even if we're struggling with someone, that we keep in mind there's a story, there's a reason behind that. And maybe they just don't have the tools yet for that. But you just don't ever know what someone's struggle is. So be very careful with our judgments and assumptions. And thank you for your honesty and sharing that. That's a hard thing. And that requires a lot of, I think, self-trust and value in yourself of where you've come and the tools that you have and how you've incorporated that. But I want to take a moment to spend on that because I think that's very, very important when we're talking about mental health and all the assumptions and the stigmas that are still around it. It's better. A lot more of us are talking about being in therapy but we need to keep those conversations going. And also, if you've got teenagers, hang in there with them. Give them space. I think what your therapist did was so smart about, we're just going to sit here, because then the power was in your end. Then it was your choice. You got to decide when you were ready to open up and have those discussions. And that requires some patience and some discipline if you're the therapist or the parent. But your kid's not going to open up until they feel safe doing so. So are you providing safe spaces, open spaces, non-threatening spaces for them to do that? So that was a little bit off, but I felt like it was an opportunity to speak to that. Do you want to add anything to that before we move on?
Well, the comparison that we put on ourselves. Thank you so much for what you said. And I do share that. That's part of my story, because if I can help one person by, hearing that, then I want to do that. And I fell into that trap of comparison when I started my business, looking at what other people were doing, and I should be doing this. And, people tend to put their highlight reels out there on the internet, and you see the smiling, happy families, but you don't see the behind the scenes when it took 2 hours of crying babies and rocking them to get the beautiful picture. And people don't see that.
No.
And I think that's important to remember that and I do try to put a lot of real information out there on my social. So it's not just me smiling. I put pictures, I've had pictures of me crying before, because to be real. But I do like people to know that, they're not alone. And so I think that we do fall into that trap, though, of comparing ourselves and judging a book by its cover, or really not knowing the full story, because you don't, this much of the story. And there's a lot more beneath everybody's surface.
There really is. And making space for that and creating safe spaces where we can have these conversations and people feel like they can do that it's okay to heal, that there's places for them to have these conversations. So thank you. So good. How we can support, and you do this already, so you can just speak out of your experience, but how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically.
It's sort of what I just had said is not comparing ourselves to them.
Yeah.
And it actually makes me think of this networking group that I'm in that I love so much. It's a women's networking group. And there's a lot of networking groups out there that will only allow one attorney, one realtor, one contractor. It's a pattern that a lot of them have. And I can understand that. But I love this one because they don't care if they have 4 life coaches in the networking group, because we're all so different and we can support each other in different ways. And that's something to actually talk about with someone who wants to work with me, is that let's do a little discovery call and see how it goes, because maybe I'm not right for you, which is okay, because there's somebody else is, and I can give them a referral to another coach. And we just need to support each other and stay true to who we are, rather than trying to constantly do what this person's doing and doing what this person's doing. Stay true to what you're doing, because you're going to be more confident about it. You're going to, that's where you're going to succeed in so many areas.
Oh, I love that. That is a textbook, beautiful comparison of collaborating, allowing space. There's room for all of us. I have a similar connection with fellow podcasters. I've got a group of about, it's grown to about 8 to 10, I think 10 women now. We all podcast. We're all in a similar lane / niche, but we all have our own approach to doing that. We've guested on each other's podcasts. We share each other's podcasts. I mentioned earlier, Jasmine was on one of these friends' podcasts, and she recommended her to me, because we all have our own audiences. We all have our own way that we appeal to people or don't. And we have places we can send them, if not. And that is a good thing. These resources are important. The work that Jasmine and her friends are doing, it's important, and everybody's going to connect in a different way, and being open to that and not seeing it as a threat, but seeing it as a way to help more people get the message out more. And I was like, how can we create more space for this? Beautiful. I love that example so much. So good. So good. The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in everything you do. Talk to me about that. Again, we got into it a little bit earlier. It's, when you have a hard time saying no to people, sometimes, but when you're also looking at projects and different things that come to you, or even the ways you used to operate. I mean, when you started this work, you talked about primarily being a resource for divorced women. That's not the case anymore. You're a resource for women, period. You've expanded and changed into that. So that's been a change in your why and your values and how you've grown into that. So I use that as an example, because that might be, a guide for you. Like, that's something I would have said yes to 3 years ago, but it might not fit now. So anyway, I kind of gave that example to give some context, but talk to me about that.
So I knew you were going to be asking this question, and it's funny because I did an Instagram reel, maybe a couple of weeks ago, actually, on this, and it was, what is your why? And I remember the first time someone had asked me that question, and I'm what does that mean? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And I realized that your why changes.
Yes.
Just like, your purpose changes when your why, when you're 5 years old, is to learn and to play and to grow. And then your why is constantly changing as you get older in life. Where I'm at right now is my why is I want to help people. I want to actually help people. And I know that you probably have a lot of guests that say that, but I felt so lost and alone when I was going through so much. And it wasn't just a divorce. I lost my job about 6 months after my divorce. And so I had so many things, and I just felt like nobody else knew what I was going through. I didn't know where to look. And when I sat with that for a while, I realized that I didn't want other people feeling the way that I felt. So I wanted to help people. And yes, that is my why at this point. And helping people sometimes means taking a break from my work because it's intense and it's hot, and I'm an empath and I feel people's feelings. So my why still, though, is wanting to help people. And I know that's probably going to shift. I mean, I'm always going to want to help people in life, but it's going to shift as maybe when I retire. That's my why might be spreading, my work by traveling. I don't know what that's going to be like, but right now, and how I always can come back to that is doing everything that you've already talked about, the self-care, the emotional health, my mental health. Those things, when I focus on them, allow me to come back to that. Those days when I feel so stressed at the end of the day and pulled in so many different directions, I have to sit and say, okay, well, what have I not been doing for me today? Because I'm not going to be able to help other people if I'm not taking care of myself.
Exactly. Especially in the work you do. There's an emotional labor that goes into it. And so you've got to be mindful of that as well, because you can only show up as well as you're taking care of yourself. And I think that sometimes we lose track of that, especially when we're trying to help others. We get so focused on that. We're like, how well am I helping them? I mean, if I'm not showing up in a healthy way, I'm not going to be nearly as helpful as if I step back and take care of myself and do the things I need to do, say the no when I need to. And also, I'd like to, how you talk about wise change. It's okay if something stops feeling authentic to you. If it's starting to feel like, this is more of a drain than it used to be. What's happening here? It might be time to shift. It might be time to change the way you're offering something. Maybe your core mission is still the same, but you got to change the way you're doing it or approaching it. So don't be afraid of that. It's an indicator, and it's letting you know, okay, all right, it's time to make some adjustments here. That's a good thing. That means you're learning and growing. And I think sometimes we get comfortable and then we wonder why we're feeling kind of restless or not at ease. That's trying to tell you something. So yeah, I think it's really important. Thank you for making a point of that. So good. Living out of your own expectations versus others. Talk to me about your expectations journey.
Well, be a good daughter, be a great singer, do all of the things. So I think it starts young, and I do not have children, but I think that I have nieces and nephews, and I, seen that my siblings raise them. And I think it starts really, really young, the expectations. And then when I got into my very first job, I remember how I just wanted to do the best job ever. And it was not saying no, not having boundaries, those words I didn't know when I was young, but the expectation, because I wanted to be a hard worker. I mean, that was something that my parents did instill in me, and I wanted to do that. But there was just this expectation, and then, growth, and you get a better title, and then you have more money. And again, like all of these expectations. Yeah. And I think that going through all the transition that I went through in the last 5 years, setting my own expectations for myself. I'm my own boss now, so that's great. So I don't.
It makes a big difference.
I can be a pretty mean boss sometimes.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Me too.
I'm hard on myself, but yes, it's those expectations, and I think as an entrepreneur, it's been really challenging over these last 5 years to figure out how to balance that, because it's like, well, you need to grow. You need to be able to see that the income's coming in and you're doing those things. And so there's a lot of work, but balancing that. So gosh, I feel like I really didn't answer your question there, but I think that the expectation that I felt so young, I was expected, to be a certain way, have really stuck with me for a long time. So I guess this is to parents out there, just, be kind to your children,
Yeah.
hard on them.
It does. And, you know,
too much.
right. And just make sure that your children know that you've loved them regardless of what path and they're going to choose that's best for them. And it may not be the path or dream that you have for them. So, you know, so if you're, and I didn't do this well enough soon enough. I wish I had. But a lot of it had to do with my own upbringing. I was certainly better than my parents were, but there was still some of that left. And, you know, so we've had those conversations. So if you've got grown children, you got to have those conversations with them. That's okay too. But yeah, be kind, be gentle, love them where they are, make open spaces for them to express their emotions and express and come to you when they feel like they're engaged in something that isn't feeling good to them anymore. And why is that? You know, is it a really healthy, solid why? Or is there something going on that just needs to be addressed within that? But be open to that and don't get so entrenched in what your dream is for them that that they don't feel loved or accepted if they're not living up to that expectation with you. And don't pay your kids when they get good grades. That's going to be my last statement on that, because that, whether it's a motivator or not, I don't care if they're flunking out of school. Find out what's going on within that. Why are they flunking out of school? Are they not in an environment that is helpful in their learning? Are they interested in different things? What's happening there? Because that just sets up that whole expectations piece. If I do this, then I will be acceptable to my parents. I will be acceptable to my teachers. But as I am right now, it sends a message rather than trying to alter the behavior that's happening and getting to the root of why. It sends a message that there's something wrong with them, and then that sets you on a whole trajectory of trying to live up to these expectations, to be good enough, to be acceptable, to receive affirmation, all of that whole train wreck. And then you're left as an adult trying to unpack, how did I get here? I've checked all these list items that everyone told me I needed to be doing to be acceptable and successful. And I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling content. I'm not feeling at peace. I'm not feeling in alignment with myself. So I feel very strongly about that. You can tell, and I love that you brought that up, because that's where it starts. It starts with the narratives they hear when they're young. It starts with the narratives that we tell our little girls. It starts with the narratives we tell our little boys. And we got to think about that. Let them be them.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like for them. Remove all these gender expectations and let them be who they were created to be. And you're going to set them on a path of feeling loved, feeling affirmed, feeling free, and open to live out of who they are authentically. So, like you said, I kind of went down on a soapbox there, but it's so true. It's so true. It does start at those early ages. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. You've had a lot of chapters in your journey. I've had a lot of chapters in my journey. They aren't all chapters we loved. They didn't all involve decisions we loved or choices or things that happened to us and how we responded. It's not just the shiny stuff that people see on our Instagram pages and our website, promos. It's deeper than that. It's more than that. I had to figure out, how do I accept all these pieces about myself so I can be okay with me? So talk to me about your layers journey.
I have always been really hard on myself. So it has been from the time that I was really young, and I was the kid young and did every diet in high school. And I was so I've always been really, really hard on myself. And I was the first kid in my family to go to college, and I needed to go and I needed to graduate. I needed to get this great job. And it was just all these expectations.
Yeah, needed. I want to put quotes around needed because it goes back to that expectations thing and what we do to ourselves.
Yeah. And I felt like I had to kind of fit into just this mold. I married my high school sweetheart. Looking back now, I was young. Your brain doesn't fully develop until you're in your mid-20s, So I didn't really know who I was. I became almost intertwined with him, which is not necessarily, I didn't know who I was. I did not.
Right. It's easy for those relationships to become very codependent when you don't know who you are.
We were very codependent, and I didn't realize that. I didn't. And it took, us getting divorced for me to realize that. So it wasn't until I was 40 years old going through a divorce when I started kind of peeling back all of these pieces. Like there were certain parts of my personality that he didn't like. Like I'm really silly and funny, like really, really. I don't think he really liked that. And so I pushed that down. And then when I got divorced, I was able to date myself. And that's really what I did. I would date myself. I would go on dates with myself and get to know me and figure out what type of furniture I really liked and where I wanted to go on a vacation and like all of these pieces that I was pushing down inside. And so it was like me starting to kind of peel that back and say, oh, okay. And I'm really usually very animated when I talk. I talk with my hands a lot and all of these things that I thought were wrong, but they were pieces of me. And there were also pieces that I, pulled back. And I'm like, okay, I want to work on this. I know I want to work on this part of me. And it's an ongoing journey forever. Forever we'll be doing that. And I think you said early on in the episode that, loving yourself who you are now, but you also can still want to grow and improve. And I think if we should love who we are now, but if you just stay there forever, then you're becoming complacent. And so I always want to be that person who nurtures who I am. And then there might be another layer that peels off that, okay, I'm going to work on this a little bit more. And it's evolving journey that never ends.
It is. You said that so well. You said a couple things that I really want to hit on. They're so important. One, the dating yourself piece. That is so powerful. That is learning how to be good with you, because it takes the pressure off of relationships of when you know how to be good with you, content with you, meet yourself where you are while you're learning and growing. You can do both. You can both love yourself well and continue to learn and grow. Because I would argue, if you don't continue to learn and grow, you're not going to love yourself well. You're going to get static and discontent and all those things. So those two things go hand in hand, and you can do them at the same time. My friend Danielle Parks, I had on last spring, she went through similar but different scenario, but she talked about becoming her own soulmate. And I thought that was so powerful because she was like, I always had this dream about the Prince Charming and all these things. And I had to learn that I'm my Prince Charming. I can be that for myself. And then I can show up knowing how to do that, live that way. And then I'm not asking a relationship to fulfill something that it's not meant to fulfill. Yes. And it takes the pressure off of that relationship and allows you both to show up fully as your authentic selves. And again, being with those people that allow that welcome that in. If there's anybody that's trying to push any part of you down, that's just part of who you are, they're not for you. It's okay to challenge that. And it's okay to ask yourself a question about, is this the kind of relationship that I need to either put some boundaries around or have communication with, or maybe needs to not be part of this season of my life anymore? Yes. And I think those are all really important questions to ask ourselves. But yes, all of that, so good. I love the dating yourself piece, of getting to know yourself, getting comfortable, and that continual growth, continuing to challenge yourself, continuing to know that there's always going to be more opportunities, more layers to peel back, to uncover, because different experiences are going to bring out different layers, and you're going to move into different seasons of your life where that just wasn't that opportunity. And so being open to that, nothing drives me crazy more than someone who makes a statement where, well, this is just how I am. I'm too old to change. No, no. I mean, if that's how you choose to live, you and I probably don't have a lot to say to each other, because think of our parents who've had to learn how to use technology and smartphones, and like they never thought they were going to have to do that. No, I mean, can you imagine explaining to your parents what when you were a kid that no. And I laugh thinking about all the different parents and grandparents in our lives that have navigated that, and the ones, and how proud we are of them when they do that. But their willingness to do that and come along has an effect on their ability to communicate with their children, with their grandchildren, to be informed. And that sends a message to those people about how much they care about having that connection. And that's that's a great example. It can look a lot of different ways, but yeah, being willing and open to that growth just opens more opportunity and capacity,
Yes.
to love and grow and experience everything that life has for you. So yeah, so good. So good. In summary, in living out feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers. And we talked about this a little bit with the dating yourself already, but talk to me about the effect this has had on your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with other people.
I love myself. And I don't think I would have said that 5 years ago because I honestly didn't know who I was. I was always comparing myself. I was always striving to be something else. I was not happy in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to say the words like, I love myself. I love who I am. I'm a pretty cool person. It's pretty powerful. And I love that I can say that now with confidence. And it's because of everything that I've gone through. And I would not wish anything like a divorce or a job loss or anything on someone. But when you do go through really challenging times, you have a choice. You have a choice to stay in that dark place, or you have a choice to move out of it. And it took a lot of time, and my path has, gone lots of ways. But now, because I love myself, because I'm authentic with myself, because I am true to who I am, I like the relationships that I have better now. I've lost friends along the way, and not because they aren't a good person or I'm not a good person. It was, we just didn't serve each other anymore. And they were there for a season of my life, and then they moved on, and that's okay. And I attract friendships now that I think are going to stay around probably a little bit longer because of the self-love that I do have for myself now. Mm-hmm. And then also, in romantic relationships, it's very different for me too, because I know who I am. I spent time dating myself, knowing, my red flags, or knowing that these are my must-haves. And I think that's really important. And again, I would never wish someone to go through anything like that. But even if you haven't had to go through that, taking that time out to really get to know yourself. If you're in a romantic relationship right now, you still should date yourself. You still need to take that time for you, because it makes you better in all those relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And and how you show up and treat yourself is going to have a lot to do with the kind of people that are drawn to you. It does. And how much you value yourself affects the kind of people you're willing to be in relationship. And you made a really good point. We've talked about this before on the podcast, but I don't think we can hit on it too hard. We sometimes feel like if a relationship falls away, that somebody is bad, somebody did something wrong. That's not the case. You just may be on different paths now. That may have served its time in its season. It doesn't mean to have anything went wrong or bad. It just might be the clock just might be up on that, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it was not a good thing or a blessing, or you just made some changes that needed to be made and it was time for that thing. So I'm glad you touched on that. I think that's really important for us to remember.
One other quick thing real quick to that is for me to say that I love myself and I'm a pretty cool person. I think that it takes a lot to actually say that out loud, because I think that can come across to people as, well, she's cocky, and confidence very different. And
it is.
I want to just challenge someone who maybe heard that and thought, wow, she's, really speaking highly of herself. It's taken me a long time to get there. And I think that when you can look at yourself in the mirror and you can say that to yourself, how powerful it is, because not everybody is going to like you, and that's okay. Someone out there might not follow me on social media or hear this podcast and say, I'm not really interested in listening to any more of Jasmine's things. And that's okay, because I still feel like I'm being true and authentic to myself. So it's to be able to say that you are never going to please everyone in the world. Everyone is not going to like you. And that is okay.
Thank you. Events! Exclamation point. Beautifully said. I love that. And because I think what we have to realize is saying those things, those are affirmations. Those are affirmations. And when we show up affirming ourselves, believing that ourselves, saying that, it's an invitation for other women to be like, oh, I like that. I want to feel that way. that's not something we have to feel threatened by. It's a good thing. And let's invite other people into that. And also quit trying to please everybody. It's exhausting and it's impossible. Yeah. So look at the things you're doing, and you can eliminate, you can start saying some no to some things that if that's your why behind it, get rid of that. You're going to feel a lot better already. So thank you. So good. So good. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Being active and moving my body. So yes, I love running, exercising, stretching, yoga, just moving my body and being active. Very important for me. I would say playing with my dog. I love animals, and I have an 8-month-old little puppy, and I love playing with her. She just makes me laugh. And if I'm having a bad day, she can just bring a smile to my face. Volunteering. I love volunteering. I am currently volunteering for 2 different organizations, and I wish I could do more, but that's the balance that I've allowed myself to do. But I love volunteering. I feel so good helping other people. Being around water calms me, and if I see the ocean's probably my number 1 favorite, but if I see the ocean, I just immediately can be calm. So I love being around water. And then traveling. I love to travel, and it doesn't necessarily have to be overseas. I have a goal to hit all 50 states by the time I'm 50. So I have 6 left. So even just traveling to new states, I just love traveling. So I think that was 5.
Yes, it was. I love the travel piece. I've been to 48 states. My husband's been to 50, and our daughters have been between 46 and 48, depending on when they left the house. And that's a big thing for us too. And it can be, just those little adventures of getting out and seeing the world. We learn so much from travel. So much about ourselves and other people. So I love it. Also love the ocean. Like I can sit on the ocean. All my anxieties, stressors just wash away. It's so therapeutic. And I will usually cry when I'm sitting by the ocean. It's just such a release for me. My husband used to be really wigged out about that. It's so therapeutic. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Focused. I feel like I'm being pulled in a lot of different directions. So I want to feel more focused and creative. And that's not with my work. That's more on my personal side. So I love painting. And so I want to get back into painting more. So more creative. Rested. We've already talked about sleep. And I think just by me not using my phone as my alarm clock, that's going to help me feel more rested. And curious. I want to be curious about other people more. I think I've been so focused on me and my business, and not that I don't have other relationships, but I want to be curious about what's happening in my nieces' lives and my friends who I only talk to a couple times a year, and just curious about things that I'm shutting out. I feel like I shut a lot of things out right now. So I want to be more curious and impactful. So I want to make an impact in so many different ways. And I think that by doing my work, I do that, but also just in my personal relationships and the way that, people see the way I'm living my life.
I love that. And I think impact can just be exactly that. That thing that you show up and do simply every day can make an impact on someone's life. I love that you talked about it doesn't have to be the big grandiose things. And I like the curiosity piece too, because I think curiosity keeps us from being judgmental. Instead of when you start to feel judgmental about something or someone that's happening, switch it to curious and start asking, first, where's that coming from? Is it based on truth? Is it based on an old narrative, stigma, insecurity, what that is? So I love that curiosity one. That's one that I've really tried to adopt more the last couple of years, and it really moves me out of the judgment zone into the asking the right kind of question zone. So I love that. I want you to speak to one other thing, because I think there's a lot of power in this. You mentioned in your character traits, you're positive, but not in a toxic way. And it's important to feel all your emotions. Talk to me about how you do that, because I think this is something that people struggle with and knowing how to do. So talk to me about how you work that out, how you do that in your life.
So I remember seeing early on in my divorce, there was a saying that says it's okay to not be okay. And I would say that over and over to myself. It's okay to not be okay when I'd have those days. Then I wrote a blog about that because to me, that saying is saying that it's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to be frustrated. The only okay is when you feel happy. And that's not true because to be able to be positive, you have to be able to feel those other emotions. And it's the way that your mind thinks about them. So you start thinking about, okay, well, why is this making me frustrated? And you're able to come out of it quicker. Yes, most of us want to live happy and joyous, positive lives. But the reality is that life isn't always positive. So it's how you navigate those other emotions that are still okay to feel. Yes. So I do post a lot of positive things. I talk about positivity. It's all about the mindset. But if you are pushing away the frustration, the anger, the sadness, all of those normal feelings, then they're all going to boil up at some point. It's all going to come up at some point. So I am all about being positive, but toxic positivity is only looking at everything with that happy, joyous, like, oh, well, the sun's shining. Well, yeah, but I had a bad day today and that's okay. So I think it's important. I do try to live a positive life and be grateful and have gratitude, but I still have those days that are hard, but it's the work that I've done on myself that I come out of the other feelings that I don't want to sit in too long to get back to that joyous feeling.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I wanted people to hear that because I think people struggle with that. And it's such an important, I think, thing to have a grasp on. We are nuanced. We can feel multiple things at one time. But if we don't feel safe or licensed to, or in environments where we're allowed to feel that stuff that's harder. And I don't call emotions negative or positive anymore. I used to. They're just emotions. They're clues. They're indicators that we need to pay attention to. And if we want to have the space to feel that true contentment and that true peace that brings out those positive feelings, and we got to work through that other stuff and not ignore it and get to the core of it and heal it so we actually can live truly in a positive way that feels good to us. And we've got the tools to walk through the hard stuff when it happens. So thank you for that. I thought that's really important. And we talk about that a lot here, but I thought it was really important to hear you just kind of lay that out and what that fully looks like and what the potential is there. Thank you so much. All right.
Well, I love that you said no negative or positive, because if you're sad and you're crying, you're frustrated, people usually think that's a negative emotion. And I love that you just said they're just emotions. They're just clues.
Yeah. And they need to be moved through and they need to be felt. And I think so many times if you are not someone who is allowed space for that, you're not going to be comfortable with other people's emotions. And I think what happens is then you don't create space for that. And that could be apparent to a child. I lived in an environment where no one wanted to hear us crying. No one wanted to hear us complaining. No one wanted to hear anything about anything that wasn't anything but thank you and gratitude. And there was no space for anything else because they weren't comfortable in it. They'd never learned how to do it. And I had to learn how to do that over time. I used to have there would be one emotion that ruled my day, and that's where I lived, whatever it was. And I was like, it did not serve me. I was stuffing all the other things. And so I think it's just really important to realize the importance of that, how you approach it, how you view them. The words you use to describe them are very powerful and will do a lot to define how you decide to approach those things and respond in those situations. So thanks so much for sharing that. All right. I love that, you can follow, Jasmine on Good Things Are Gonna Come is the title of her site and her Instagram. Talk to us about your work. You've got so many things. You've got a 90-minute, all right, let's get in here. We're going to do this. You've got a book. You do coaching. You've got these intentions. I want to hear about the intentions piece, but then talk about where we can find you and all these other things. And don't worry, Field Podcast audience, embracinglayers.com on the resources page. All this stuff will be here that week when Jasmine's episode drops and you'll have access to it forever. But talk about that right now while I've got you on here.
Well, my website's the best place to go because it has links to all my socials on there. So goodthingsaregonnacome.com. And I post a blog that when I started my business, it was weekly. And so it's bi-weekly just because I'm busier, which is great. But I do post a blog that's free. And I have an intentions blog that I recently posted on there. So, and also if you're looking for a word of the year, I list 125 different words to give you some inspiration. But you can find my blog on my website and then the links to all my socials. So I do have a 90-minute intensive mindset masterclass that is just really working on some of those simple tools to start shifting the mindset. And they're tools that actually work. And so it's 90 minutes. I offer it once a month. You can find that link on my website. And I do have one-on-one clients. We do a discovery call first. Let's just get to know each other. Let's figure out if my style works for you and if we mesh. And again, if not, I can refer you to somebody else. And I do have an event coming up in Denver. It is virtual as well. It is a women empowerment event, thepowerofme.co. And we'll be live in Denver, but if you can't make it in Denver, and we have keynote speakers, we have people who are talking about all different areas of life. It's just, it's similar to an event I had last year, and it's really, I'm so excited for it. So you can find the link to that on my website as well.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. Oh, good stuff. All such good stuff. All right, Jasmine, thanks so much for being here with me today. You just come at this with such an authentic but vibrant energy that is really just attractive and helpful. But also, I just love your approach to if I can't help you, let me connect you with somebody who can. I love that. I love that authenticity. Because that's just I'm suffering for words here. I've been doing these recordings all day. I'm losing my words. It's such a show of integrity in what you're doing. And the bottom line is getting women and people these resources that they need. So thank you so much for that. Field podcast audience, don't you worry. All these things are going to be on our website again at bracingleaders.com. Go to the resources page. I strongly recommend, even if you don't participate in any of the programs, follow her on social media. She puts out some great stuff that's just really encouraging. That can just be the thing that you need to see that day to kind of set you straight or just contribute or something you can share. Really, really good stuff there. But thank you so much for your time today, Jasmine. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, Field Podcast audience, feel encouraged. Go look at these resources and have a great week.